What's the harsh reality that everybody needs to hear? Story 1. This one is both harsh and comforting. People don't think about you as much as you think they do. That means that your feelings might be ignored or not considered. People will forget things about you and might not remember things you've done together that were very memorable for you. That can be hard to realize. On the other hand, they probably don't remember that embarrassing thing you did in high school, or they don't care about it. They notice patterns of behavior more than occasional bad days that you have. So those times you feel bad about being off with someone, they probably don't think about them, unless they became frequent. Personally, I find that comforting. I remember when /name redacted pooped in her white skirt in 3rd grade and sat in it all day. I'm 39. Story 2. Not everyone likes you. Some people won't like you for very arbitrary reasons, or for no reasons at all. It takes way too much of your energy trying to make people like you. Use that energy on yourself and your loved ones. It's a life lesson I learned much later than I could have. Story 3. You can become disabled unexpectedly at any point in your life. Make sure you are taking advantage of the abilities you have while you have them. It really is. I went from being a perfectly normal 21-year-old, full-time college student, full-time job that was actually well-paying, volunteering as an EMT every weekend, would go on long walks with my dog multiple times a day, and a decent social life. One day my hands stopped working. My boss sent me home saying she wanted a doctor's note for me to come back because she was worried about me. Ended up in a hospital for the weekend, but they found nothing. Took a few months, but I got diagnosed with combo rheumatoid and psoriatic arthritis. They hoped it was late onset JRA, so I went through 8 months of hellish medication before they confirmed that it wasn't. This was my life now. I have ups and downs, but thanks to the pandemic putting me out of work, I could finally qualify as a dependent and get financial aid. Now that I'm about to graduate, my body went, but what if we got another debilitating autoimmune disorder? So on top of RA, PSA, Ehlers-Danlos, celiac disease, asthma, psoriasis, chronic migraines, long haulers from COVID 3 times, Raynaud's, and all the side effects from the meds for those, I now almost likely have ulcerative colitis. Never take your health for granted. Take care of yourself and live life to the fullest. Story 4. You can love someone with all of your heart and not be loved back in the same way. I wasted a lot of time in my life either being too stupid to learn this or at the very least too stubborn to admit it to myself. Story 5. It's a Star Trek reference, but it's a very realistic one. It's possible to make no mistake and still lose. That is not a weakness, that is life. Sometimes you need to accept you did everything within your power right and it still went bad. And remember that this isn't something to beat yourself up over. These things happen. It's like Dwight in The Office. Not everything is a lesson, Ryan. Sometimes you must fail. Story 6. Bad things can happen to good people. Good things can happen to bad people. It's unfair. It's life. You can do everything perfectly and still fail. Story 7. Just because someone is your family doesn't mean that they have your best interest at heart. Corollary, not all parents love their children. Story 8. Just because you go out of your way for people doesn't mean that they will do the same for you. Most of us learn that the hard way. Story 9. Life is not automatically easier just because you're a good person. Expecting life to treat you well because you're good is like expecting the bull not to charge at you because you are a vegetarian. Story 10. Nobody is coming to save you. You have to do it yourself. Be the person you needed while you were growing up. Story 11. Your first relationship most likely won't be your last. When I hear young girls say that their first boyfriend is the love of their life, I just smile. That was me, madly in love at 15, and I thought we were going to be together forever. It makes me laugh. Thankfully, my first relationship was loving and respectful enough to make me hopeful for the next. I didn't expect mine to be, but 16 years later, here we are. The fact that we've grown and changed tremendously is something of which we've remained very conscious, however. Time and transition are inevitable forces which must be treated with due reverence. We do yearly, or more often as needed, state of the relationship check-ins and waited to get married until our late 20s and early 30s. I am far from a relationship expert and YMMV, but it's worked for us so far. Story 12. You don't realize the good and best times as they are happening. I wish there was a way to know you were in the good old days before you've actually left them. Andy Bernard. Story 13. You gotta walk your dogs. I heard someone put it this way, which really hit home. To you, it may feel like a chore, but to your dog, it's probably their favorite part of the day. Story 14. It won't just happen. I spent a lot of my early 20s being sad and defeatist, feeling sorry for myself. I always coped with this by telling myself I'd make something of myself eventually, and meet a woman eventually, and be happy eventually. The truth is, eventually doesn't come if you don't make it come. Improvement has to be proactive. You can end up 40 years old, living with your parents, playing video games all day, and with no motivation. Nothing will prevent that from happening other than you. Story 15. Your trauma is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Also, that shared trauma is not a good foundation for a relationship. Story 16. I thought I'd be happy when I graduated college, or when I got my first apartment, or when I bought my first home. Don't expect happiness to be at the finish line. Happiness comes from yourself, and the now. Enjoy the process. Story 17. You don't have as many friends or family as you think. I have a chronic illness, and the number of people who bet on me during my hardest times only to pop up, surprised I was upset with them. Once I started healing is truly disgusting. You've got a core few. Nurture those relationships like your life depends on it. Mine does. I remember reading one of those This Is My Life articles in a magazine about 20 years ago. It was about a woman who was in a fairly fresh relationship when her boyfriend became paralyzed. Despite not being in love with him, she stayed by his side to take care of him, giving her entire life up to do so, while everyone in the mutual friends basically faded into the background. About 2 years later, she realized that she and her boyfriend were basically only still together due to him now being disabled. Despite a ton of guilt, she did the right thing and broke up with him. When she later ran into those same friends of theirs, they were incredibly unfriendly to her, treating her coldly because she had abandoned her boyfriend when he needed her. Edit, she also commented how much that hurt considering she had stayed and they had gone AWOL, yet they were still treating her like a monster. I was probably about 19 when I read this, and even at that age, the total lack of self-awareness these people apparently had completely dumbfounded me, and still does. Story 18. Not everyone has to shit themselves or hunch over in pain after consuming dairy. Those cramps, that gas, the shit, it's called lactose intolerant. Get lactate or give up the Captain Crunch. Story 19. Physical appearance matters. Almost everyone is shallow, and if you are ugly, people might treat you as inferior, and you will have disadvantages in almost every aspect of life, i.e., pretty privilege or halo effect. Look that up. As an ugly person, I can confirm. Story 20. The probability of you making it as a professional gamer, streamer, YouTuber isn't worth quitting your job. You have a higher chance of getting hit by a car or winning $1 million lottery. Not saying give up, but be realistic. Keep a job that'll pay the bills while you try. Story 21. Your life can be changed forever in the blink of an eye. You have to deal with it or die. I'm 62. I went to run errands one day with my beautiful wife for 42 years, and I came home 2 hours later a widower. She died of a massive heart attack in the passenger seat. That was about 13 months ago. It's been hard, but I'm still here thanks to some wonderful people in my life. Story 22. Depression, an illness, a bad upbringing, and many more. These are not excuses to treat people badly. If someone is nice to you, then these are not excuses to treat them like shit. They are not required to forgive you. No one is required to give you a second chance. We sincerely appreciate you taking the time to watch our YouTube video. If you find our content helpful and enjoyable, please click the subscribe button to stay updated on any new videos we share in the future. Thank you once again, and we hope to see you in our next upcoming videos.